Good evening, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett at the CBS Broadcast Center here in New York City. After weeks of Democratic resistance and Republican infighting, President Trump's sweeping legislation he calls a big, beautiful bill is now the law of the land. President Trump signed his domestic policy legislation during this Independence Day ceremony at the White House a short time ago. President Trump touted the enormity of this measure before signing it. CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro watched this happen from the White House South Lawn. He's continuing to report on this from the White House today. Aaron, what was President Trump's message to the crowd there and to folks at home before this law goes into effect?
Yeah, he began his remarks here to the crowd by noting the B-2 Spirit bombers that did a flyover just above the White House as the Star-Spangled Banner was playing. And those aircrafts are notable in particular because they're the same ones, or same model at least, that were used in American strikes on Iranian nuclear sites just 2 weeks ago. And President Trump spent some time talking about that, saying it was, quote, total obliteration of those sites, as he has said before. Noted how some of the members of those flights of the air base in Missouri were here in the crowd, asked them to raise their hands if they wanted to. We saw a handful do that, while he joked that many of them want to keep their identities hidden. But primarily towards the end, the second half of his remarks, he talked about what he has called the, quote, one big beautiful bill. He referred to it as, quote, the greatest victory yet of his second term, a sign that he has put a lot of political capital into getting this bill passed, and another acknowledgement that this bill has a lot of the priorities that he mentioned on the campaign trail when it comes to increasing spending at the southern border, when it comes to making his 2017 tax cuts permanent, as well as his pitch to voters, especially in the battleground state like Nevada, that he will eliminate taxes on tips. This bill does that in part, though at least temporarily, but this was really a pitch not just to the crowd of military family members here and members of the military at the White House, but as well to congressional Republicans who will now have to sell this bill when they go back to their districts later this summer and into the fall.
And as you're speaking to us, Aaron, we were just looking at footage of President Trump, joined by First Lady Melania Trump, greeting guests there at the White House South Lawn as their Independence Day celebrations continue. Aaron Navarro, thank you very much. We want to jump over now to congressional correspondent Nikole Killion on Capitol Hill, watching all of this. And Nikole, I want to pick up on something Aaron left on there, which was that messaging is next. Democrats will pounce on this, and President Trump tried to kind of get ahead of this and say they're going to lie and say this will kill a lot of people. Republicans will have to sell this back in their districts. So what is in the bill itself that each side will try to characterize?
Well, I think, Republicans will clearly use the centerpiece of this package, which is the extension of President Trump's 2017 tax cuts, as their main selling point, that this is putting money back into people's pockets, and this is really going to fuel growth in the economy. In fact, that was a point that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made to me when he was here on Capitol Hill trying to rally Senate Republicans to support this package. He said, I think you'll see a lot of economic growth in the third and fourth quarters of this year if we're able to get this bill done, in part because it makes many of the business tax credits in this package permanent, which he argues and Republicans have argued will provide more stability and certainty for businesses. Obviously, there are a lot of tax credits for families. We saw an increase, for instance, in the child tax credit upwards of $2,200. It includes these new Trump savings accounts, if you will, where families who have newborns will get $1,000, and that is something that they can put towards investing in their child and in their future, whether that's education or other needs. And then, of course, the rest of the individual tax cuts were also made permanent. Some of them temporary, but, nonetheless, this is something that will likely impact a number of Americans. What we hear Democrats more specifically campaigning on, of course, and what they made the arguments against in this package, which is why they unanimously oppose them, are these cuts to Medicaid and food assistance programs like SNAP. The Congressional Budget Office projects that upwards of 11.8 million people could potentially lose their health coverage if this bill becomes law. So that has been a point that Democrats have made, even suggesting even more than that could be impacted. You also have, with respect to the food assistance programs as well, because a lot of the burden will shift onto states to implement these programs and to carry more of the cost for these programs, that is something that we have heard will have a negative impacts, and more specifically on the Medicaid front too. We have heard Democrats make the argument that rural hospitals could close, in addition to people potentially losing their health coverage. So those are the arguments that Democrats not only made in the debate on this bill, but that they say they will now take on the road, as well as they campaign against this package, while Republicans campaign in support of it. So those competing arguments are going to continue in the weeks and months ahead.
And Nikole, I think what's really challenging for people watching this is they won't really know who to believe until the bill really makes its way through the system. And that will take time. It's not going to impact anyone's 4th of July weekend. Can you help us understand some of the timing when it comes to Medicaid cuts and SNAP cuts? Because I understand that some of it won't actually happen until after the midterm elections of next year, on which both sides will be campaigning because of this bill.
Yeah, and that's really an important point to make, because the president's tax cuts expire at the end of this year. That is part of why Republicans and the president were making such a big push to get this done as soon as possible, even though this July 4th deadline was pretty arbitrary. But obviously they needed some legislation to continue the tax credit. So that part of the package will take effect as soon as this year. But as you point out, some of these changes to Medicaid and food assistance will likely be phased in over time. So, for instance, these new work requirements that Republicans have been talking about, in making sure that able-bodied individuals qualify for Medicaid only if they work 80 hours per month, 20 hours per week, volunteer or study in some capacity, those don't take effect until the end of 2026, which would be after the midterms. And worth pointing out that actually in the original form of the bill, when it first cleared the House, or right before it cleared the House, there was a push to have those requirements phased in even later, but it was conservative Republicans who wanted that moved up. And so now, even though it takes effect right after the midterms, nonetheless, people may not feel that impact right away.
Yeah, folks should certainly remember that as maybe some families debate this over the weekend. Nikole, Killion, thanks so much. We appreciate your red, white, and blue attire. Before I let you go, what would you put on the grill this weekend? I'm asking everybody.
Oh. Well, I'm a watermelon person myself, so I like to stay cool. I make like strawberry pies on the 4th of July, so that would be my thing, something cool, because it's very hot here in Washington right now.
I love it. Appreciate you, Nikole. Stay cool this weekend. Thanks for your time.
You bet.